Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today we're going to look at the studio albums of the great Electric Light Orchestra, otherwise known as ELO. We'll call them ELO for the rest of the show here because that's how I always call them. But yeah, Electric Light Orchestra, the big long name, ELO for short. Remember, this is just the studio albums, not live albums, not compilation albums, not soundtrack albums. I'm not even going to talk about ELO 2, although I'll talk about them right now. So ELO 2 was the kind of the little project put together by drummer Bev Bevan after the Electric Light Orchestra broke up. Jeff Lynne decided to call it quits. All right, so Bev and a bunch of other guys went and put together ELO 2, which I think lasted just 2 albums. I have the first. I don't have the second. I don't think there was any more than that. But that wasn't too bad, right? Not quite the same, but not too bad. But so I'm just going to concentrate on the ELO studio albums. I am going to include the more recent Jeff Lynne's ELO stuff because for me, ELO is Jeff Lynne and whoever he decides to have in the band with him. He's the mastermind, the creator. So I'm going to include those albums, all right? And I'm going to start off with my least favorite and go all the way to my favorite. I'll tell you right now off the bat, I am going to be pretty partial to the kind of early 70s through to the end of the 70s material because I grew up on this band. Okay, so I'm pretty partial to those. The 80s stuff is okay. The more recent stuff is okay, but anyway, you'll see as I go through. So coming in at the bottom of my list, again, not a terrible album. I don't dislike any of these albums. But some of them are, they're okay, which is this. So this was the first thing we got from, the band in quite some time, Electric Light Orchestra, Zoom, or Jeff Lynne's. I don't even think we included his name on this one. No, he did not. This came out on Frontiers Records right around the turn of the 2000s. I remember seeing this in the stores. I was like, woo, ELO's back. I'm all for it. And then listening to it and kind of like, yeah, that's okay. And I still kind of stick by that. I think it's an okay album. It's nothing spectacular. It's missing kind of like all those wonderful orchestral swells and things. And it's kind of mellow. But, it's got Jeff's unmistakable voice. And he does know how to write a hook. All right. So, again, not a terrible album. Not one of my favorites, though. And not one I reach for all too often. All right, next up, I'm going to go with the most recent one, From Out of Nowhere, which, again, I like, okay? This is pretty decent. I love these covers on them as well. The half of this I dig. The other half is kind of okay. From Out of Nowhere, which is the title track, is probably the best thing that's come out of the ELO camp in well over 30 years. I really like, in fact, once I heard that, I'm like, great, this is going to be like an old school style ELO album. I'm totally digging it, and then the rest of the album is okay. It's a little on the bland side, but it's good. Help Yourself is good. Losing You, I kind of like. Down Came the Rain, Sci-Fi Woman. It's got some fun songs. And I think for a, latter day Jeff Lynne and ELO album, this is not too bad. I definitely think it's a step up from Zoom. I think all these albums are a step up from Zoom. And then again, Zoom is not terrible. I think slightly more successful is Alone in the Universe, which came out before From Out of Nowhere. I don't know. They're both kind of about the same. I think my enjoyment level on both is pretty comparable. Again, some good tracks here. When I Was a Boy, that's kind of cool. It's got this kind of Beatles-ish things going on, which you could say about a lot of the ELO albums, right? Dirty to the Bone, Ain't It a Drag, The Sun Will Shine on You. I mean, Alone in the Universe title track, cool tune. I'm missing on these latter day ELO albums. Again, it's mostly all Jeff playing everything, singing everything. I'm missing the violins and the cellos and the wealth of synths and different kind of keyboards and the occasional blistering bluesy rock guitars and a lot of it's just very piano driven and just kind of like just the tunes are kind of mellow. They're pleasant, but they're just a little on the bland side, but not unlikable by any means. Like I said, I've listened to, especially the last 2, Alone in the Universe, From Out of Nowhere. I've listened to them quite a bit. I enjoy them. Top shelf ELO, though, that's a stretch. All right, next up, I'm going to go with Secret Messages. as the three 80s albums for me, also kind of fun, but missed the mark a little bit. You know, I'm looking at the track list. There's some decent stuff on here. I'm not a big fan of that. Rama, 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 rock and roll is king. ELO doing that kind of rockabilly stuff. I'm not hip on, but there's some cool kind of like futuristic pop on here and stuff like that. Time After Time is good. The title track, Secret Messages, I like. There's some pleasant stuff on here. I know there's some people that absolutely love this album. I don't dislike it. I don't love it either, but I think it's, as an 80s, ELO album, kind of moving away from their classic sound, it's fine. Balance of Power comes next. Again, some strong songs. Heaven Only Knows, catchy, kind of poppy. I think a lot of my issues with some of these 80s albums from them, it's like, I was never a big fan of the Traveling Wilburys. Okay for what it was, super band, super group, but it just really wasn't my thing. And I a lot of the kind of seeds of that I hear on some of these ELO albums, but not bad. What else we got on here? Jeez. Sorrow About to Fall, decent song. Calling America, I actually like. Okay, it's catchy. A lot of catchy stuff on these 80s albums. This is probably my favorite of the three, Time. I think this was kind of the last gasp at the kind of classic ELO sound for me anyway. A lot of tracks on here, very kind of spacey synths going on here, a lot of kind of pop hooks and things like that. Rain Is Fallen, Another Heart Breaks, Twilight, Ticket to the Moon. For me, always an album that is more about, one of those albums that you got to listen to from start to finish. Rather than all the individual tracks kind of standing out. I think it plays as a good kind of, if I'm not mistaken, this is kind of like a concept album anyway. And so for me, this is one of those albums I just want to listen to start to finish, take it all as a whole, because I think that's the way that it was the way it was meant to be when it was created. So, a good album. I think when I was a kid, I would have ranked this a little bit higher, and I do still really enjoy this album a lot. But I'm going to go with Discovery next. This, for a lot of people, was kind of like a jarring kind of change of pace. The band kind of, again, late 70s, disco's all the rage, right? So Jeff and company were doing a lot of kind of almost danceable, hooky pop stuff on here with a lot of like the programmed synths and things like that. And, the kind of the grooves and the rhythms were, going for that feel. But I really liked this album a lot when it came out. I was big into this album a lot. Don't Bring Me Down, Shine a Little Love. Kind of sounds like Earth, Wind, and Fire a little bit, but I always dug that. Last Train to London. I love the vocal harmonies on this album. Just amazing. Horace Wimp, another really great song. Confusion. Great stuff. On the Run. Midnight Blue. This kind of takes like out of the blue into even more commercial waters for me. And I don't know, I just always dug this album. I remember, buying this as a kid and on LP and just like thinking, yeah, this is kind of different, but I still really dig it. It's really, really memorable. So I still have really fond memories of it. I probably don't, I really toyed with how I would rank this compared to some of the earlier stuff. And as you're going to see in a minute, if you would have asked me 30 years ago, 40 years ago, I would have ranked it higher than I'm going to now. But, tastes change a little bit over time as you get older and all that good stuff. So I'm going to go next with ELO 2, their very second album. Now, I know what you're saying. A lot of you longtime prog fans are probably saying, Pardo, ELO, the debut, and ELO 2 got to be all the way at the top. They're their most progressive records. Yeah, and again, a lot of time, when you do stuff like this, when you put these lists together, when you start ranking albums, you're going to have the albums that hit you at a moment in your life and stay with you forever, and that's happens for a reason, right? So I didn't start getting into the first two albums till way later. I didn't have either. In fact, I got the first album on an import CD, like probably like in the late '80s, mid late '80s, and I didn't get this. I never had this till it came out on CD, and then I got the remaster and all that kind of stuff. So, those bunch of early, mid, late '70s albums were the ones that I had. Those are the ones I grew up on with. So those are the ones that are really cemented in my psyche. But this is a fantastic album. All right. Again, those first two ELO albums, very different. Tons of cello, right? And kind of early synth sounds and just weird kind of mix of kind of like Beatles folk tunes and like avant-garde and pop and art rock and just totally different than everything that came after it, right? In old England town boogie, all right? Boogie number two. Fun song. You got Roll Over Beethoven on here. From the Sun to the World, Boogie number one, and of course you've got the Kulama, right? A pretty wild album, very, very different. I dig it. It's definitely, again, if you're more into the proggier side of ELO, Electric Light Orchestra, the really early ones are the ones to seek out. Next up, I'm going to go with the debut. Again, pretty damn cool album. You got Roy Wood still in the band at this time, all right? The guy's fresh for the breakup of the Move. So you got Bev, you got Roy, you got Jeff, all right? 105.38 Overture. Killer song, all right? What else? Nellie Takes Her Bow. Mr. Radio. Oh, I'm looking over the track list and like, yeah, this is a great, great album. Queen of the Hour is probably my favorite tune on here. But again, it's a great album of a band in their real formative stage, but the stuff that's going to come after is what really grabbed me and took hold of me. But again, for all you real prog rock people, I know you're going to be saying, nope, the first two albums, top of the list. And that's totally cool, right? Because we all have different sets of ears, right? Albums mean different things to a lot of us, so that's totally cool if you're going to be ranking those up top. Next up, I'm going to go with On the Third Day. And again, this is a different cover than the one I had. I had the LP, the big white LP with all the guys sitting on the front, exposing their navels, right? I remember getting this and totally loving it. This is kind of like a dark album, a little bit. But a lot of good stuff on here. Bluebird is Dead, King of the Universe, Ocean Breakup, Mama Bell. And, as a young kid, I was into ELO when I was a Kiss fan. ELO was probably like my second. ELO, Kiss, Genesis, Kansas, Meatloaf, the Eagles. Those were the kind of other bands I was into at the time, Steve Miller Band, while I was a big Kiss fan. And I remember like hearing Mama Bell for the first time. I was like, yes, because of course I was starting to get into heavier music because of Kiss. And that cranked up Les Paul from Jeff Lynne on there. I was like, yeah, awesome. Dreaming of 4,000. Killer song. A very, very strong album. I like this one quite a bit. And I toyed with placing it higher than this one, El Dorado. And, any given day I might. But this is a pretty special album. And I think a very different album in their catalog. Again, pretty much a concept album. And just a very majestic, got all the classical orchestrations on here, and the Richard Tandy's early synths and the great vocals. It's just a really, really strong album. The big single here was Can't Get It Out of My Head. A haunting pop song. Boy Blue, Mr. Kingdom, El Dorado, Illusions in G major. Top to bottom, just a really, really cool album. And, a classic for a reason. All right, my top three, there was no change in those. Top three were always going to be the top three no matter what. A New World Record is going to come in number 3. A fantastic and fun album just filled with great anthems. Again, probably the album that maybe bridged the gap to the much more accessible ELO. Not that all their albums aren't accessible to an extent, but, Tightrope, Telephone Line, Jesus. So Fine, Living Thing, Shangri-La. So many great songs. Again, the pop hooks, totally present. A lot of great synths on here, a lot of great strings and violin and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's the ELO that I love. I love the ELO with the big choruses, totally catchy choruses, the violins and cellos flying high, the synths all over the place, the thunderous drums of Bev Bevan, and of course the tasty guitar licks of Jeff Lynne. That's, for me, that's the classic ELO sound. Hard to beat it. So coming in at number 3, a New World Record. Dig it a lot. Coming in at number 2, we're going to go with Face the Music. I remember buying this LP back in the day and playing the hell out of it. And, you know, for me, there was nothing more exciting, excuse me, and more spooky than kickoff track Fire on High. I can't tell you how many times I'd listened to that, and the beginning just absolutely creeped me out. And then you got the amazing synths, and then the kick-ass guitar riff, all right, and the Bev Bevan's just absolutely bombastic drumming. You know, and I remember, you know, on Saturday afternoons, being a kid watching afternoon sports. I believe it was Wide World of Sports, if I'm not mistaken. It was one of those sports shows that were on every week. The theme song was Fire on High, and I remember just totally getting into that all the time. So it was one of those weekend sports shows. It may not be Wide World of Sports, may have been the other one, which name is escaping me. But anyway, fantastic song, one of my favorite rock instrumentals of all time. You got, of course, the big hit Evil Woman. You got Knight Rider, Poker, another one of those great kind of hard rock tunes from the band. They didn't do a lot of them. Killer guitar work on that. You got Strange Magic, another really good hit. Down Hometown, more they're kind of like a country blues tune. All right. One Summer Dream, Waterfall, Knight Rider. I mean, Knight Rider is another great tune. Fantastic album. I just really love this album a lot. I always have. But in the end, my favorite ELO album is, as always, the first one I ever got, Out of the Blue. I can't tell you what it was like to be I mean, this came out, what year is this? Is it 77? Okay. I'm pretty sure I either bought this in 77 or got it in 78. So I was either, I think I got it when it came out, because I remember going into the record store and seeing it on the new rack. So I was 11. And just loving this, obviously. And, you know, back in the day, you had the big LP, the double fold out, right? So you got this and all the wonderful stuff on the inside. And I remember seeing that, and I was like, oh, I have no idea who that band is. But, you know, back in the day, you would buy an album, an LP, based on the album cover art if you never heard the band before. And I had never heard of them before, but I was like, it's got a cool, colorful spaceship on the front. I'm going to give it a try. So, of course, it was a double album, so it cost a little bit more, so I had to actually save up my allowance, because back then I was getting like, I don't know, 50 cents a week or $1 a week, whatever it was. So I had to save up my allowance for a few weeks or a month, whatever it was, to get this. And because it was, I don't know, I think regular 77, I think regular LPs were like, what, $4.99, $5.99. I think the double, it's less than $10. So I saved up to buy this, and then I remember putting it on, double album, just totally getting into it, opening up the whole thing, and just going along to the lyrics and looking at the all the artwork and everything like that, and just loving the kind of spacey pop art rock sounds of, you know, tunes like Turn to Stone, Sweet Talking Woman, Mr. Blue Sky. All right, just so many great songs. Big Wheels, Summer and Lightning, Sweet as the Night, the cool Richard Tandy synthesizer exploration of the Whale, Birmingham Blues, Wild West Hero, Cross the Border, Jungle, for crying out loud, right? Night in the City, Stepping Out, unforgettable melodies, unforgettable songs, and another one of those, for me anyway, albums that I'd always put on and play start to finish. It, to me, was the way this album was meant to be played. And I know there are some folks who are like, I always thought Out of the Blue was a little bloated, and, you know, there's some weak tracks on here. I never felt that way. Again, probably because I've grown up with this and I've listened to it hundreds and hundreds of times, and I just, you know, every song is like an old friend. And that's what happens when music or albums or songs or bands or whatever hit you at a certain point in your life and kind of stay with you through all the journeys that you have in your life. And this album, for me, has been a good old friend for, 40 some odd years. And it's always going to be there for me. It's familiar, it's comfortable, all right? Get that warm fuzzy whenever I listen to it. Are there more adventurous ELO albums? Perhaps, okay? But for me, this kind of put it all together. The songs are just unforgettable. The musicianship is stellar. The artwork, I mean, the whole thing. Just this, for me, is just, it's one of my favorite double albums of all time. All right, so it's my number one. So there you have it. You know the drill, guys. In the comments and feedback below, list your favorite ELO albums. All right, rank them however you like them, and tell us why. We need more of that, because we get a lot of comments that are people like, I don't agree with your ranking. There's no way that album is number one. Well, but then you never say what yours is. All right. Instead of arguing with me, you're not going to change my mind on this, guys. But we want to see your ranking, okay? What do you think are the best ELO albums and why? Talk about why. This is a time to rejoice and talk about the bands and the albums they released, okay? Because that's what this point of the show is all about. It's not about me stating definitively what are the best albums from any of these bands I'm talking about. No, it's more about, here are my favorites. Let's hear what your favorites and why, and let's just talk about them. Because, in my opinion, there's a lot of great albums here. All right. And what's really cool, what I really like, is seeing people who put on the top of their list some of the ones that maybe are a little bit lower on mine, and talking about why you love those albums so much. So if there's people out there, who love Balance of Power and that's your favorite, that's fantastic. I want to hear why. All right. Maybe it's something I'm missing, right? Or, if you think that, Zoom is a top 5 ELO album, that's really cool, right? I may not agree, but I want to hear why you think that. All right. So let's all share in our memories, share in our love of this band or whatever band that I'm talking about here on this show. All right. Make some sense of their discography and kind of take it from there, because it's all about kind of collaboration and discussion. All right. That's what's so great about doing a show like this. And if there's any of you that haven't heard any of these albums or maybe haven't listened to them in a long time, now's the time to do it. All right. It's always a good time to make room in your life for some great albums by some great classic bands, or some new bands as well, right? So this is on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. So coming up, if I can get to it later today, I will. If not, it's going to be tomorrow morning. We are going to rank the studio albums of Porcupine Tree, which probably has been the most requested band for me to do since I started doing these ranking the album shows. In fact, even when I was doing the top 10 songs all the time, I was getting people asking for Porcupine Tree. So we're going to do that, and that'll be the studio albums. So that's either coming up later today or tomorrow morning. Tonight, I'll be posting a special show that I'm doing with George and Craig Seibert, where we're going to talk about fond musical memories, okay? And how great songs or albums or bands are tied to memorable times in our lives, okay, and how we associate that event or time in our lives with a special song, with a special album, with a special band, that whole thing. So we're each going to come to the table with about 5 albums, songs, events, okay, and just do a little musical storytelling. So that's usually fun to do. I love reminiscing about stuff like this with people and sharing important times in our lives and experiences and all that sort of thing. So we'll be bringing you that later on today. So we'll see you guys either, like I said, see you later today regardless, but tomorrow morning or later today, also expect Porcupine Tree. All right. So we'll see you soon, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.